The main priorities, not surprisingly, are housing, mental health, and just really making sure that we're doing better for Nunavut.
Tonight it's all over but the throat singing in one of Canada's shortest election campaigns.
Let us feel the warmth of a new dawn, and above all, let us seize the promise of a brand new day.
Merci, mes amis. Thank you, my friends.
To the victors in another minority government go the spoils, with the cooperation of the opposition parties.
I look forward to all of those Indigenous candidates that ran and were not successful in continuing the work that we desperately need them to do.
And they may have run and lost, but Indigenous candidates still have a role to play. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Well, the 2021 election is over, and we're not far from where we began 5 weeks ago. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party were re-elected to a minority government last night. With possibly 2 years until the next federal election, Canada's asking, what's next? Here's Lindsay Richardson with the latest on the Liberal Party's outlook.
There's no rest for the re-elected. In a post-election tradition, Justin Trudeau greeted supporters at a metro station in his Montreal riding of Papineau Tuesday morning. An appearance made mere hours after calling victory at Liberal headquarters, closing out a $600 million roundabout election.
Some have talked about division, but that's not what I see. That's not what I've seen these past weeks across the country. I see Canadians standing together in your determination to end this pandemic, together for real climate action, for $10 a day childcare, for homes that are in reach for middle-class families.
And not to forget,
for our shared journey on the path of reconciliation.
the Liberal Party fell just short of a majority government, and although some cabinet ministers lost their seats, former Indigenous Affairs Minister Mark Miller held his in the Ville-Marie riding for a third consecutive term.
I look at it with some sobriety and say to myself, this is the trust that Canadians place in us. Parliament is a place that is not without review and criticism and opposition, and it makes the country that I think is the greatest in the world thrive.
Though this exercise in status quo is technically over, ballots are still being counted, a cabinet shuffle is impending, and all eyes will be on the upcoming throne speech. But for the moment,
let us feel the warmth of a new dawn, and above all, let us seize the promise of a brand new day.
Merci, mes amis. Thank you, my friends. Merci tout le monde.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
Well, here's how the results break down currently in the House of Commons, though some ridings are still too close to call. The Liberals go from 155 seats to 158, a gain of 3. The Conservatives stand pat with 119. The Bloc Québécois add 2 seats, moving from 32 to 34. The New Democrats gain a single seat. The Green Party stays at 2, and the number of independents goes from 5 to 0. Trudeau promised Indigenous people radical change in 2015. Has he lived up to that pledge? And has the pace of change been swift enough? Brett Forrester caught up with Indigenous leaders to ask. Brett has more now from Ottawa.
For National Chief Roseanne Archibald, the election results showed people want stability, at least while the pandemic continues. But that doesn't mean she's happy with the status quo.
You know, the slowness of progress really means it's costing us lives. It's costing the suffering of our children. And I think we've got to get together and have a meaningful partnership with all parties, because it is a minority government, and figure out that healing path forward.
Indigenous leaders and Justin Trudeau have had positive relationships over the last 6 years. David Chartrand is the vice president of the Métis National Council, and he's pleased with the pace of change under the Liberals.
Right now, I know for a fact there's never been a prime minister that has devoted so much time to Indigenous files. It's not perfect, I'll tell you that. There's still things to do. But how do you expect everybody to solve 150 years, 200 years in that 4 or 5 year span?
But the Native Women's Association of Canada disagreed. CEO Lynn Grew said that the Liberal government's approach must shift, even if the government still looks the same.
So they made a lot of promises, and they need to keep those promises if there's going to be trust, with us, and we're going to believe anything that they say.
The leaders may disagree on Trudeau's track record, but they all promise to keep pressuring him to act. They'll be watching closely as he names his cabinet and issues them a new mandate in the coming weeks. Brett Forster, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Brett. Well, we want to hear what you think of this election outcome and the campaign. Here's how you can reach out to us. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. or leave us a comment on our website at aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The federal party leaders have all now spoken about the election campaign and the results. With more on that, here's Daryl Stranger.
When the dust settled at the end of the night, the Liberals had been elected for a third term, a second consecutive minority. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau said late on Monday night that voters have given his government a clear message about what they want.
I hear you when you say that you just want to get back to the things you love, not worry about this pandemic or about an election. That you just want to know that your members of Parliament of all stripes will have your back through this crisis and beyond. The moment we face demands real, important change. And you have given this Parliament and this government clear direction.
Today, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole faced questions surrounding his leadership, but O'Toole instead addressed how the party will focus on reviewing how the Conservatives can be better in the next election.
We're all disappointed with the results from last night. We had a pandemic election that really produced no change. It cost the country $600 million and further divided this country. So we're going to work together to undertake what went right, what went wrong, and learn and build trust with Canadians.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said today he still believes calling an election was unnecessary, but he will work with the Liberals.
But I'm going to go back and say, you messed up, but doesn't mean we can't still work to get things done for Canadians. And I stand by that. Of course, we can be counted on for the things that are going to help people out. We'll always be there. If it comes to hurting people, he'll probably try to work with the Conservatives, but he's not going to find support from us when it comes to hurting people.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
I was going to do it in French real quick.
In Atlantic Canada, Conservatives made inroads that helped deny the Liberals a majority government. One of them being the defeat of Fisheries and Oceans Minister Bernadette Jordan. Angel Moore was in the Cape Breton riding of Sydney Victoria, where Mi'kmaq incumbent Jaime Baptiste was re-elected.
I'm here in Member 2 First Nation, Unamagi, also known as Cape Breton, where Jaime Baptiste held onto his seat in the Sydney Victoria riding. One of the candidates he defeated is also Mi'kmaq. Jeff Ward ran for the NDP but came in third place. But he says more Indigenous politicians are needed for all political parties.
Why shouldn't all the parties have Mi'kmaq candidates? And that's important. So everybody should have that right, that they should stand up, and it allows people to make that decision, and also if they believe in a party, that they should follow that party.
In the southern part of Nova Scotia and South Shore St. Margaret's riding, former DFO Minister Bernadette Jordan lost to her Conservative opponent, perhaps a victim of the turmoil after the Mi'kmaq Treaty fishery was launched a year ago. It was met with violence from non-Indigenous fishermen, and fisheries officers seized Mi'kmaq traps and made arrests, including a 14-year-old Mi'kmaq youth. The Liberals insist the Mi'kmaq fish within the commercial season. Ward says the Mi'kmaq fishery needs to be negotiated like the treaties.
To my wife, Stephanie Elaine. And it's not about us writing a plan from a federal party to say, look, we think this is for your community and this is what's going to work. No, we need everybody at the table and we sit down and write it like we did when we wrote those treaties. We had a feast, we had a ceremony, we even have a song for it.
Talks with the Liberal government and Indigenous leaders fell apart, while Mi'kmaq fishers say they will continue to assert their treaty rights, while it remains to be seen who will be the next Minister of Fisheries. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Member 2 First Nation.
The riding of Edmonton-Griesbach has gone from Conservative to NDP, with incumbent Kerry Diot losing to Blake Desjardins. 27-year-old is now the only Indigenous MP in Alberta. He's received nearly 40% of the vote in his riding. Desjardins is Métis Cree. He was raised in the Fishing Lake Métis settlement. He's also the first openly two-spirited MP in Parliament. During his campaign, Desjardins said poverty is the main issue in the Edmonton-Griesbach riding.
Social housing is something that is critical to ending poverty. So I believe that that is one of the major steps to actually making sure poverty is reduced in a fast and effective way, by making sure there's actually houses for families. Here in Edmonton-Griesbach, building social housing units that are going to put folks who are houseless into homes fast and immediately.
Nunavut also has a new member of Parliament. We have much more post-election coverage coming up after the break. Welcome back. Nunavut stayed orange last night, but with a new face as the territory's new member of Parliament. Iqaluit lawyer Lori Idlut is now Nunavut's MP, and she started her celebration off in Inuit style. With more, here's Ken Driscoll.
By last night at midnight, it was all over but the throat singing. The NDP candidate for Nunavut, Lori Idlut, is now the 5th MP in Nunavut's history.
I am very excited. I've been saying that I'm nervous and excited up to this point, but I think it's safe to say that I'm quite excited now.
Before last night, the only elected office Idlut had ever held was as a member of the Iqaluit District Education Authority, basically the local school board. During the campaign, she traveled the territory and heard from Nunavut.
The main priorities, not surprisingly, are housing, mental health, and just really making sure that we're doing better for Nunavut.
Idlut was the lawyer for the Nulajat Land Guardians, the group of protesters that blocked access to the Mary River iron ore mine. Sometime in her term, the Nunavut Impact Review Board will recommend to the federal cabinet whether the mine should be allowed to expand or not. The final choice remains with the Liberal cabinet.
If Phase 2 is going to be approved, then it needs to be met with strict conditions.
The throat singers are Idlut's daughters, Mylena and Crystal. They celebrated their Anana's win with a song. And now, Nunavut will find out just what kind of song Idlut is going to be singing when she reaches the House of Commons. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
The Liberals were able to keep the Northwest Territories red. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs brings you the results.
With 102 of 103 polls reported and a margin of 600-plus votes, Liberal incumbent Michael McLeod declared victory.
We were hoping that we would have a majority. If we ever needed a new mandate, it's now during a pandemic.
It was a tight race, with only mail-in ballots left to be counted today. McLeod narrowly succeeded, holding 38% of the vote to New Democrat Calvin Cochillia.
My thanks to the other candidates for putting their names forward. Jane Grunwagen and Calvin Cochillia from the NDP, and Roland from the Greens, and the lady from Thunder Bay. It made for an interesting discussion.
That reference is to NWT Conservative parachute candidate Liam Wilson.
Over the amount of people who had to self-isolate during the snap election.
On the minds of many, McLeod's response to the number of Northwest Territories voters denied the opportunity to vote because of COVID-19 isolation.
We did bring legislation forward. It had first and second reading and then got delayed by the other parties. And it included a longer voting period, 3 days I think it was.
This will be McLeod's third term as Member of Parliament. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Still in the north, the Yukon's top doctor has a new role in the House of Commons. Dr. Brendan Hanley is the new Liberal MP for the Yukon. He's perhaps best known as the territory's Chief Medical Officer of Health. The CMO took a leave of absence so he could campaign for the party. Hanley will replace Larry Bagnall, who has won the last 6 of 7 elections for the Liberals. Hanley's decision to run for politics has been criticized by the territory's Conservative Party, who have accused him of being partisan. Now to British Columbia, where 42 seats were up for grabs in the federal election. Not many seats have changed in the province, but some ridings are still too close to call. APTN's Lee Wilson has the latest.
In BC, 3 ridings are still too close to call the day after the election. A seat once held by independent Jody Wilson-Raybould, Vancouver Granville. Liberal candidate Talib Noor Mohammed leads by a slim margin. The Nanaimo Ladysmith riding is still close, but NDP's Lisa Marie Barron is leading. Richmond Centre is the final riding without a clear winner. Liberal candidate Wilson Miao is in the lead.
Thank you very much.
NDP party leader Jagmeet Singh was re-elected to Burnaby South. The NDP could again hold a balance of power with a Liberal minority government. BC Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Terry Chiji sees a minority government as the best outcome.
That's the best result for First Nations and Indigenous peoples, considering the work that needs to get done. We've seen some success over the last 19 months in terms of implementation or the passing of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples and a number of issues that were brought forward by First Nations.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
In the Winnipeg North riding, incumbent Liberal Kevin Lamoureux once again succeeded in taking the seat he's held since 2010. First time Indigenous NDP candidate, though, Melissa Chung Mowat, may have not won, but hopes to build off her first campaign for another run in the next election. Our Daryl Stranger has more.
Election night at the headquarters of Winnipeg North candidate Melissa Chung Mowat didn't end in victory for the Chinese Métis challenger from the NDP. She lost to Liberal incumbent Kevin Lamoureux and said even without running in politics previously, she expected a better outcome.
I came into this campaign without having ever run before, and so we knew that it was going to take a lot of work to connect with community and let them know that there was a strong another option. And so we were hoping for a better outcome, and so I think that we were hoping for a better outcome tonight.
She said she wants to see more Indigenous and visible minority people running in the future.
I do want to see more, Indigenous people running, more Indigenous people elected, more people of color elected, and we need to come around those candidates because that's how we're going to create change.
During APTN News Election 2021 special coverage, commentator Michael Redhead Champagne had a message for those Indigenous candidates who did not get elected but still have a valuable role to play going forward.
Just because you didn't get elected, it doesn't mean we don't need you. And so I look forward to all of those Indigenous candidates that ran and were not successful in continuing the work that we desperately need them to do to be an effective local opposition to whoever did get elected, so that Indigenous topics and Indigenous solutions and the beauty and the genius that is inherently present within First Nation, Métis and Inuit communities is actually recognized in a meaningful way by this upcoming government, because I feel like we got a lot of genius in our communities that's not being recognized.
As for Chung Mowat, she did say she would run again in another election. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Wise words there from Michael Redhead Champagne. While with most of the results in, it could still take days for Elections Canada to count all of those mail-in ballots. A spokesperson says they need to be verified as legitimate before they can be tallied.
That takes time, and we've given the returning officers up to 24 hours to do that very slow, careful verification. Then these ballots in the anonymous envelopes, not identifying anybody, will go into the ballot box to be counted. And that count will, for them in most places, going to take place tomorrow.
And that process could take until Thursday or Friday. Well, time for another quick break. When we return, some non-election news. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Dotting the land are rail bridges, and this is one such rail bridge that crosses the Sturgeon River. Our viewer Doug Romaniuk sent this photo to us. I'm not sure if it's in Alberta or Saskatchewan. Great photo, though. Be sure to send your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at Wednesday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 15 in St. John's, 22 under the sun for Charlottetown, 19 with rain in Kuujjuaq, 20 in Nain, 25 in Montreal, 23 and cloudy for Chibougamau, 15 with showers in Sault Ste. Marie, rain, and 21 in North Bay, rain and 15 in Thunder Bay, showers and 13 in Sioux Lookout, 10 with rain for God's Lake, 14 and sunny in Norway House, 19 for Winnipeg and Gimli, 21 in Brandon, 20s in Regina, Yorkton, and Saskatoon, 11 with showers for Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Over in northern Alberta, pretty rainy day, 16 in Fort McMurray, 14 for Fort Chip. Sunny and 23 in Medicine Hat, 22 under the sun in Lethbridge. 19 for Vancouver and Victoria. 16 with showers in Prince George, 11 with rain in Dease Lake. Snow and 3 in Old Crow, 10 with showers for Whitehorse. 9 in rain in Yellowknife and Norman Wells. +1 with snow for Sachs Harbor, 11 in Paulatuck. 5 in Baker Lake, showers and 3 for Chesterfield. Snow and -2 in Resolute, 0 in Joe Haven. A volcano on a Spanish Canary Island erupted after a week-long buildup of seismic activity. This is on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands. You can see lava shooting up and plumes of thick gray smoke rising. Authorities are speeding up evacuations for around 1,000 people. The volcano last erupted in 1971. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For all of your election news and much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. Stick around. An encore presentation of Face to Face is up next. Have a great night.